Challenge your woodworking skills with this washstand project on the Appalachian Heritage Woodshop.
The Appalachian Heritage Woodshop is brought to you by Christian Internet Services, common sense internet marketing and web design. Our internet marketing commissions are based on results. Robinson and McElwee, thinking business, practicing law. Waterlock's unique tung oil and resin blend stains, sealers, and finishes. The go-to finish for wood enthusiasts since 1910.
Appalachia covers over 200,000 square miles across 13 eastern states, where you will find steep, rugged mountains, vast, lush forests, swift-moving streams, and valley farmlands. Appalachian settlers were a unique breed. Isolated by the rough terrain, mountain dwellers had to be self-reliant and innovative to survive the harsh living conditions. This washstand is top of my mind. They have a nice little shelf down here, which is where they would store the pitcher of water when it's not being used. And then it gives them the basin or the bowl to actually clean. They have towel racks on both sides, and of course a single door with dovetail construction. This is oak. It is an old piece. I'm here with Margie Parsons. Hi, Margie. One of the things that you all have here in this log house is this washstand. This was before indoor plumbing. Mm-hmm. So the only way they had water in the house was to carry it in.
Yes.
So when they went to clean themselves, they would have a dedicated area, and that was the purpose of the washstand.
Mm-hmm. And I was told that in the process of when it was bath time, the dad or the man was the one that took a bath first, and you would think, being that he was the one that worked, he would be the dirtiest one. But they go from the dad on down the line, and the baby was the last one, so that's where they, don't throw the baby out with the bath water coming in effect. It seems like it's totally backwards.
It doesn't matter if you're using hand tools or machinery in your shop. You need to know the safe way to operate your equipment. Make certain you have the proper safety equipment, and most importantly, use your PPE. Be safe and enjoy your shop time. Okay, I have dimensioned some nice 8/4 white oak. So I'm ready to cut the legs. It is imperative that these be square. So I need to take the time and make certain the blade is square to the table. Now I'm ready to rip it to the proper width. Okay, I just run this over the joiner, give me a real nice square edge. So now I'm ready to rip these two to the correct width also. Now that I've got the table legs cut to the right width and the right thickness, before I do anything else, I want to run them through the drum sander. And when I'm running something through the drum sander, in order to keep it square, I need to mark the edges so I know which ones have been sanded and which ones haven't. So I'll just put some marks, turn them over. Now you can see, even though it's gone through the sander, This one has a burn mark from the saw blade, so I haven't sanded enough of it. So I've got to run it through the sander. But that means I have to do all of them on side one and side two again. So now that the legs are sanded, and you can see now they are perfectly square, now I'm ready to take them and cross cut them to the correct length, and then I'll lay out the mortises. Now that I've got the legs sanded and square, I need to square cut the ends and cut them to the correct length. And I'm going to do that here at the table saw using my miter gauge. Now I just need to mark it to the right length and set my stop block. Now I'm ready to cut them to the right length. Now that I've got the legs cut to the right length, I'm ready to lay out the mortises. The first thing I do is get the legs so that when you look at them, you have the same type of a cut on the visual surface. And then I like to mark it, and I'll put a wee little square in the middle. Now I can always put the legs back to the same orientation. Okay, and then I'll label them which is which. This is the best surface, so that'll be the front. So this is the front, and if I'm looking at it from the front, this will be the front right, front left, back right. I want to take a square and make certain that they're perfectly lined up. And then also like to go by feel. And now I'll clamp them in place. When I lay out a mortise, especially on a table leg, I prefer to come from the top down 1/2 inch. I don't like leaving less than 1/2 inch there because it weakens the edge of the mortise. And then I come down the required amount from that and put a mark. And now I'm ready to square across. Now all of them are laid out so they're all identical. Now I do one other thing. The mortise is not centered because the apron is close to the edge. So I need to mark the edge, and each leg, depending on the position of the leg, will be different. Now I've already got the machine set up. I've got the fence set properly. My rollers are set up right. My hold down is correct. And I don't have stops. I go by marks on the fence. So I've got a little pencil mark here which denotes this end. And then a pencil mark over here which denotes this end. Now when I cut the mortises, I want to cut the two ends first, and then I'll cut mortises in between, leaving a little island of wood, and then I go back and remove that island. Also, if you notice, the little window right here is on the side. A lot of people put that on the front, and that's not correct. It needs to be on the side. The purpose of that is to allow the chips to come out. And since I'm taking the mortise and side to side, then that will allow the chips to come out. If it's on the front, the chips cannot come out until they come all the way to the top of the leg. Now I go back and remove the little island that I left. If I start at one end and go all the way to the other, the chisel will have a tendency to flex. This keeps it from flexing. and keeps the mortise nice and square. I've just finished making the last of the mortises on the bottom. I've made a mortise for the stretcher for the bottom shelf. I've also made a mortise for the board that goes under the drawer. I'm going to go ahead and mark the center of the top and bottom of the legs, because I need to put this on the lathe and turn it, and that marks the exact center. Now before I turn the legs, I want to take a little bit of time and clean out the mortises that I've just made in the legs. And if you look down inside, you can see quite a bit of chips, and all of those chips need to come out like this. So the way I do that is with a chisel, and I pare down. Now you can see how nice and clean that is. So I just have to do that to all the mortises. Okay, now I want to turn the table legs on the lathe. And what I like to do, where I marked the center point, I like to take a little gimlet and start a hole, and then a drill. And drill a little 1/8 inch hole. Now I want to put this in the hole I just drilled and drive it in there. And you never use a metal hammer for this. It'll mushroom over the end, and then it won't fit in your lathe. I want to transition from square to round. I always have trouble with it chipping out, especially with oak. So I'm going to take a handsaw and notch that just a little bit. To turn the legs, I start with a roughing gouge and turn it around, then use a parting tool to establish the shoulders. Just use the gouge to turn it to shape. I just continue to turn. I use the parting tool to establish the small diameter and the gouge to turn the transition from the large diameter to the small diameter. And then I just do the rest by eye. Then I'll put a straight edge on it to see if there's any irregularities. Then I'll use a gouge to turn the feet. And then it's ready to sand. Okay, now I've got all the material cut to the approximate length. What I need to do is face joint it and then run it through the planer to get the right thickness. Okay, now that I've face jointed all the boards, now I'm ready to send them through the thickness planer. Okay, now what I want to do is make the tenon for the aprons for the washstand. Normally I use a dado blade on my other table saw, but I thought I'd take this opportunity to show you all how a tenoning jig works. This is a tenoning jig. Before I put it in the table saw and use it, what I need to do is cut the shoulder. So I've got my blade set up 1 inch over from the fence, and we got set up at the proper height. So now what I'm going to do is make a score cut for the shoulder, for the front and back. This is the only time it is okay to use the fence and a miter gauge at the same time. The reason you can use the miter gauge and the fence at the same time is because the blade is not high enough to cut all the way through the board, so you will not have a loose piece trapped between the blade and the fence. So now that I've cut the shoulders on the faces, now I need to cut the shoulder on the top and bottom. So I need to raise the table saw blade up a 1/2 inch. So now I'm ready to give this a try and cut my tenon. So now I'm ready to cut the tenon to the right size. Okay, now I've got the top dry clamped and the bottom shelf dry clamped. So now I'm ready to glue these up. So I put a carpenter's triangle on it so I can get them put back in the same position. I'm just going to use a little bit of PVA glue. I like to make sure I get a nice even coat of glue. I like to rub it back and forth a little bit. Now I'm going to put another clamp right in the middle. Now you can see the glue start to squeeze out. Okay, now I've disassembled all the parts to the washstand. I've erased all my pencil marks and I'm ready to glue it up. So I'm going to start with the sides. I like to put glue in both the mortise and the tenon. The glue has a tendency to run down to the bottom of the mortise. And where I really want it is on the side wall of the mortise. So I use a little brush to make sure it's distributed onto the side wall. Now I have cut the drawer runners, and I like to put a guide on top of it so that the drawer goes in nice and square. And I just put a very small bead of glue on there. I've made a template for the towel rack holder. I used a French curve, and this will go onto the apron, and then the towel rod will come from here to the back. So I used another template to get the shape of the back. Okay, now as you can see, I've already pre-drilled the holes for the towel rod. Now what I'm going to do is cut this in half and then cut the shape. Okay, now I'm ready to sand the edges. I'm going to do that at the oscillating spindle sander and the belt sander. Now I'm getting ready to install some drawer kickers. This will keep the drawer from dropping down too far when you pull it out, and at the same time it will also give me a good way to secure the top. The drawer kickers will be installed with biscuits. Now you can see I've removed the clamps from the wash stand. Now it's finally starting to take shape. I've gone ahead and installed the towel rod supports. Now I've got the bottom shelf, which just secures in here, and the top fits right in here. Now that I've got it in place, you can see I need to make sure that the location for the towel rod lines up with the location of the towel rod on the front support. Okay, now you can see I've already pre-drilled the holes for the towel rod. Now I need to cut the contour on the back. So now I've got the back cut. I'm going to just set it up here so you can see what it looks like. So now I'm ready to measure and turn the towel rods. I have some oak blanks cut that I'm going to turn for the towel rod. These have already got the corners knocked off. I did that on the table saw. I used the parting tool to find the dimensions of the high points and the low points and the tenon, and then I use the gouge to transition between each of these. It's a quick, easy turn. After that, then I use sandpaper to sand it nice and smooth, and that completes the towel rod. I just got finished using the raised panel bit in the router table, profiled the side and the front of the drawer bottom. So now it's ready to install. The drawer, the front was hand cut, half-line dovetails, and the back is put into a dado groove, and it's set in from the back just about 1/4 of an inch. So now I'm ready to install the drawer bottom. It goes in like so. Make sure it's all the way in. Make sure it's centered up. Now the reason the dado is set in and not a rabbet at the edge, that creates a very small lip, so it's easy to grab a hold of the drawer bottom and pull it out if needed. It also makes this stronger because you've got a little bit of meat on the edge. So now it's just a matter of taking a small nail. One nail is all you need. So now that I've got all the components cut and fit, now I'm ready to disassemble it, erase all my pencil marks, do some final sanding, and apply a finish. As you can see, I've got all the parts to the washstand disassembled and laid out. I'm going to spray a water-based poly using a 4-stage high volume, low pressure sprayer. Here's the washstand completed. It turned out really nice. I especially like the curves on the back, the turn towel rack, the drawer on the front with the old-timey pull is a nice feature. The turned legs accentuate the oak. This was a good project here at the Appalachian Heritage Woodshop, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you're interested in any information or plans on any of the items featured on the Appalachian Heritage Woodshop, just check out our website, AppalachianHeritageWoodshop.com. Remember, be proud of your Appalachian heritage.